co-host Graham. Today's going to be a fun one. We're going over the top 5 players at every position in the NFL for 2022. So this is a projection. That's why I said for 2022. We're not basing it just off last season or the career or anything. It's just simply projecting who the best players at each position. I guess you could say like statistically or just by the eye test based off 2022 or who we think is going to be the best in 2022. So that's going to be that. Graham, do you want to add anything to that?
Not. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there.
Okay, well, anyway, before that, we're going to get into the Roquan Smith trade request. So that'll be coming up here. But yeah, we're excited to do this. Top 5 players. We both are going to have us on the same graphic, but we each have different lists.
Yep.
So, but before we get into that, let's get into the Roquan Smith trade request. So, Graham, as we saw, Roquan Smith put out a whole. Well, it looked like I don't know where he put it out on because Ian Rappaport posted the whole it was like the note screenshot of his whole description. So my key point was it sounded like he planned on staying in Chicago, wanted to stay in Chicago, was happy in Chicago until the new regime came in with Ryan Poles as the new GM and Matt Eberflus as the new head coach, and he feels that they aren't valuing or respecting him, and the contract details exactly haven't came out, so he was just disappointed when he was offered. One thing I saw, though, I forget what it's called. So instead of an initiative, it was the opposite, to where usually a player, if they reach a certain amount of accolades or stats in a season, they get a bonus. For Roquan Smith, what they offered him, yeah, it's not an incentive, though. It was the opposite. What they offered him is if he doesn't get the accolades or stat or whatever they had, he would lose money. So that was weird. I saw that. I think it was out of 94 non-quarterbacks that make over $15 million, no one else in the league has that. So that probably made Roquan Smith feel disrespected a lot. And he has requested a trade. As a Bears fan, I'm not too happy about that. But there's always a chance it gets resolved. We've seen it. Deebo Samuel's got resolved. Some people think that Roquan Smith could just be doing this and putting it public that he wants to trade just to maybe get the Bears' attention and make him get the deal done and get him extended before the season starts, because season starts in under a month. But also, Roquan Smith did kind of leave the door open to staying in Chicago. He didn't completely close the door in his little note or whatever. So, Graham, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like Roquan Smith as a player. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the podcast. I know we both will. But I think his trade request in a way is deserved and undeserved both. The Chicago Bears absolutely disrespected him. He is a amazing linebacker. He's young. He doesn't want to play on the franchise tag next year. I mean, this guy deserves to get paid. He wants his money, and the Bears are going to be doing that. I think him requesting the trade is going to be good. I'd like to see different destinations for where he could go. I think my number one destination for Roquan Smith would be the Kansas City Chiefs. That defense is already really young, and I could see the Kansas City Chiefs, trade their draft some of their draft capital and maybe one or two different players that the Chicago Bears could use. But I can see a package with the Chiefs going there. I could also see a package of him, sneaky team that not that many people are talking about, and that's the Indianapolis Colts.
I think that's bold. I don't think that's happening, but go
bold. I don't think it'll happen, but I'd like to see Leonard and Roquan Smith as a linebacker do it. It'd be nice. They both play kind of different, but they also would mirror each other very well. But I think the number one spot to see him go to would be the Kansas City Chiefs, and that would be cool.
So trade destinations, teams that popped up. Chiefs were a good one, but I was thinking other teams like maybe even the Dolphins, the Falcons. The Falcons, Deion Jones coming off a down year. Falcons have Ryan Pace, former Bears GM, in the front office right now. They've added a lot of Bears players this offseason, so Roquan Smith could be an interesting one. And probably the favorite, in my opinion. Well, my prediction is he stays with the Bears. I think they're going to get a deal done to keep Roquan Smith. But if he were to get traded, I think the number one destination is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They like linebackers, and Devin Bush hasn't quite developed into the player that maybe they thought he would. He had a good rookie season, got injured second year. Last year was a little disappointing. So it wouldn't shock me if they traded for Roquan Smith. But the Chiefs are another good one. They have Matt Nagy there now, former Bears head coach.
Yep.
No, Matt Nagy's an offensive guy, but I remember Matt Nagy always raved about Roquan Smith, so I'm sure he would have a good say to the Chiefs team organization in getting Roquan. But I think he ultimately stays with the Bears. I think that they're going to find a way to get a deal done, and he's going to – maybe this was just to get it out there that he really wants to get this deal done, obviously wants to get traded, but I think he still left the door open, and I think he's going to end up back in Chicago as the Bears are going to get desperate to get a deal done with the best player. So that's the Roquan Smith news. Now we're on to the NFL player rankings. So this is going to be a fun one. Graham, what are your thoughts on this? Are you excited?
I'm excited. We're going to get a little too heated here. But Nick, are you ready to start it off?
Yeah, we're both kind of more of the, I guess, I don't think we try to be, but more of our takes come off as hot takes than a lot of other people's takes.
Yes.
Because
I agree.
I'm not one of the person who looks at a ton of like social media takes or anything like that, or like Instagram and Twitter takes. But from the few I see, a lot of my takes seem a lot different than those. And it seems like with a lot of fans, there's a lot of players in a general perception, and everyone has the same, like almost the same exact rankings. And if anyone has anything different than that, they kind of get a lot of heat for it. So
yes.
that's interesting. But you see 3 guys we have on the cover here on the graphic.
Yep.
Those are some of the guys we like a lot this year. But ready to get into the quarterbacks, Graham?
Yes, sir. Hit us with it.
So moving to the quarterbacks. So as you can see here, we just popped up the top 5. Mine is on the left. You see Nicolas, and Graham's is on the right. So we'll start. Want to start from 1 and go down?
Yeah, sure. We can start off with the top. I'll explain my list first, and then we can explain yours, and then we can just talk a little bit about it. Is that how we're gonna do it?
Yeah, I was thinking we could go. You go 1, I go 1, or you can just go through your 5.
Yeah.
Well, either way, I think if you go 1, I go 1, we can kind of connect ours, because if you talk about like Josh Allen, then I can start talking about him, like why he's my 1 and 3. We kind of not like yell at each other, but go back and forth a little bit, and just provide our analysis on these players. So for Patrick Mahomes, you got Patrick Mahomes on 1. Or at 1. What made you have Patrick Mahomes at 1 for this season, even with the loss of Tyreek Hill, which I assume could hurt his production? What makes you have Mahomes at 1?
Because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's the same quarterback that took the Chiefs to the Super Bowl the 2 years in a row. He's the same quarterback who has always given us those razz plays. And I think personally this year, despite losing his best weapon, I still think he's still going to prove all those haters wrong, and I think the Chiefs. A lot of people are kind of the Chiefs out of like even playoff spots, which I recently like are like low wild card teams. I still think the Chiefs have a great shot to win. I don't know if they will. I personally don't think they will. I think they'll come to a close second behind the Los Angeles Chargers, but I still think Patrick Mahomes is still quarterback in football by the end of the year. So Nick, what about you at Josh Allen at 1?
Yeah, so I got Josh Allen at 1. So with Josh Allen, I think a lot of people think he's going to have his MVP season. He's been close the last couple of years, and I'm on the train that he's going to have his MVP season as well. 1 and 2 are so close for me. I was kind of really on Josh Allen most of the offseason, but Burrow really made me almost put Burrow 1, but I ended up going with Allen. We just see the overall talent he has. He basically, with the loss of Brian Dable, is the Bills' offense now. How much he does as a rusher for that team, it wouldn't be crazy to say he's the best rusher on that team, better than all the running backs at running. Yeah. He's definitely has a case for it. And we know the cannon of an arm, just the physically imposing talent of Josh Allen. He's really needs to just be a little bit more consistent from game to game. He had those couple times where he wouldn't perform as good from game to game last year, but I feel like he put I think Josh Allen, his high moments, he at his peak, he has the highest peak in football. I think Josh Allen at his best, as we saw in the playoffs last year, is better than any quarterback in football. And I think if he can just become more consistent, he has all the talent, obviously, and he's shown that he can be one of the best quarterbacks in football. And I think that this year, even without Brian Dable, I think he has a lot of good receivers, and I think he's going to be able to put together a full season of being the best quarterback in football and win his MVP.
I like that.
But Joe Burrow, I'll quickly go my number 2, then we can go back to you.
Yep.
Joe Burrow, it was hard to have Joe Burrow at 2 just because I thought he should have won MVP last year, and I think he's only improving as a football player 2 years now off the injury. You factor in that the O-line has improved. I think statistically his numbers were very good last year, especially advanced statistics-wise. I don't see any flaw in Joe Burrow's game. Like, I don't even think I could say, like, with Josh Allen, I said slight flaw consistency maybe. Burrow, I don't think he has any flaws in his game. I just don't think his ceiling is quite as high as Josh Allen's, but his ceiling is definitely still very good. That's why I have him at number 2. But overall, I think he's the most accurate quarterback in football, up there with Tom Brady in that aspect. I think he's one of the best pocket passers in football. He really has a good deep ball connection with Jamar Chase. And I just overall think with that offensive line, with the good receivers, and with his overall talent, he's going to put up a very good season. And I think, so for me, Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are the 2 top MVP candidates. So I'll move on to you now for your number 2. You got Rodgers at number 2. We both have 2 different number 2s, which is kind of weird because quarterback, I guess our quarterbacks are a lot of things that most people agree on more than it looks like we do here.
Yeah. So Aaron Rodgers at number 2 for me, it was kind of hard for me to put him this high. It was hard for this, but then I remember it's Aaron Rodgers. This is the same guy who won back-to-back MVPs the last 2 years. Granted, I don't know if he really deserved it this year. I think Joe Burrow probably had an overall better and more consistent year. Aaron Rodgers, though, think about it. Guy, he's kind of aging like fine wine, kind of like Tom Brady. I think he's going to keep it up. I think he's going to bring this very depleted offense, excluding the running backs. He's going to bring this overall depleted offense, weaker O-line because we still don't really know about David Bakhtiari. He's still a little bit on the question mark side with his injury. He's had a flare-up recently. The offensive line still isn't as, strong. The wide receivers obviously losing his number 1 target of Adams. It's just going to make things a little bit more difficult for him. He's got 2 new rookie receivers. I want to see how he reacts this year with someone like an Alan Lazard being a number 1 receiver, a speedster guy, usually put in the slot, now he's going to be put on the outside. See how he goes with that. Because we know Aaron Rodgers, he's that type of guy to bring the lower-end talent or the guys who aren't necessarily the best at their position and make them one of the best, like, for example, Jordy Nelson and a Randall Cobb. But I have him at 2 because I think the Packers are going to be a really good team this year, and I think he's going to be on that.
I want to add a little bit to Rodgers. So I explained this in my quarterback projected rankings where I had him at 8 last video yesterday morning that came out. But anyway, with Rodgers, I could see him being maybe not 2, but I could see him being in the top 5, which we would say for the back-to-back MVP. I don't think he should have won MVP last year. I think his deep ball has declined a little bit, and his physically talent isn't what it once was, but still very accurate, very good decision maker, definitely the best decision maker on the football field in the league. And I think what holds me back, you kind of hit it with putting Rodgers on this list, is the loss of Davante Adams, I think, is very key. I think that's going to bring Rodgers' touchdown total down a little bit. He's put up like big, very high touchdown numbers the last couple of years. I don't think that's going to be the case. He's not a guy who throws for like 5,000 yards now. He's more of just a 4,000-yard guy right now. I think he's going to have around 4,000 yards. I don't think he's going to have like 38, 40 touchdowns. I think he's going to be closer to the 28 to 32 range. And then he's still going to have very low pick numbers, very good touchdown to interception ratio. I just don't think the yards and numbers and touchdowns are going to pop off the screen this year. And I think they're going to be more of a rush-first offense, but they're still obviously going to pass the ball at a high level. They got Aaron Rodgers. But I just don't think he's top 5 with all the good quarterbacks this season. But, again, it wouldn't shock me. That's probably me having a hot take because I'm sure the majority of the people are on your side with Rodgers being at number 2. But we can move on to your number 3 guy. You can add to kind of what I said about Josh Allen. I touched on him as my number 1. Why do you have him at 3?
3, kind of just exactly what you said. The consistency for me is the reason why he's at 3. The two guys above him consistently the past couple of years have shown the consistency to be amazing. Mahomes, he never ceases to, have that Mahomes magic that we all know and love. Aaron Rodgers, aging like fine wine. And Josh Allen, if this was a talent power rankings, he'd be at 1. You put the nail on the head. Freakishly amazing athleticism. I mean, the guy is the best rusher on the team. He has probably the strongest arm in football. Maybe the competition is between Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert as well. There's a conversation for those 3 guys, but I think Josh Allen has the best arm. I think he has the best arm talent as well. When you watch that guy scramble out of the pocket, magician out of a hat sometimes when he throws those ridiculous throws. In a way, some of his throws are a lot better than Mahomes, but the only problem is that he doesn't do it on a consistent basis. And the definition of like showing that against the other Josh Allen and the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, that was you let one of the worst teams in football completely just clamp you up, and a weakness from him, but I think it also grew him and made him more mature for the playoffs. And I think this year he's going to build on that, and I think he's going to solidify himself at 3rd in the NFL with the 3rd best quarterback in football.
So coming in at my number 3, this is actually I want to add one more part to Josh Allen first. Josh Allen, with what you said, how you said with the inconsistency, I mentioned that. I'm gonna say that mine is a little bit of a projection. Him becoming overall more consistent than he's been in the past. So I'll just add that part to that. But moving on, number 3, a guy who I was kind of shocked you didn't have in your top 5, but you do have 5 good quarterbacks in there. Justin Herbert. Me and pretty much everyone besides the people who just hate that he did not make the playoffs last year are hyping this guy up. I think he could be 1. It wouldn't shock me, but I think the top 2 I'm pretty kind of set on. But Justin Herbert's kind of my 3rd guy this year. I think the overall talent and his overall ability to elevate the guys around him is really good because he's still putting up the very good numbers the past couple of years, even with his receivers leading the league in drops last year. I think his receivers look good, but they're a little bit, maybe, I don't know if I want to say overrated, but that's kind of what I'm saying. I think Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are both top 25, but not top, I think Keenan Allen gets too much top 10 talk. I think he's around the 20th range. But anyway, Justin Herbert, obviously his talent stands off the screen. Just an amazing arm, can really push the ball downfield. What really impresses me is his ability to throw the ball under pressure. He's been very good at that early in his career. I think the only thing that Justin Herbert needs to become more consistent at is his accuracy. It's good, but there's just times where he misses throws by a lot, and you like to see him clean that up a little bit. But I think he has good coaching with Joe Lombardi, and I think his overall talent is there. His offensive line now is one of the 10 best probably in the NFL. And I think it's really not a hot take, in my opinion, to have him at 3. I think a lot of people would kind of agree with that. But some people, like you, don't have him in the top 5. So before you get into your number 4, do you want to say a little bit why Herbert just missed?
Yeah.
I assume he missed.
So he just missed. I have number 6. Justin Herbert, the reason why he is not over Tom Brady or Joe Burrow is that I personally think Joe Burrow and Tom Brady they have that knack that Justin Herbert doesn't quite have. We saw the glimpse that he has during the last game of the season against the Raiders, where he, 4th and 17, 4th and 20, getting them into positions to win the game. Unfortunately, the defense couldn't hold strong, but we of the clutchness. But you also have to remember it's the Chargers. Chargers have the history. Big believer in history. So, history can repeat itself. And I'm scared. Justin Herbert's talent is through the roof. It is like you said, his arm talent is great. If this was arm talent, he is probably either 1, 2, or 3 with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I love his arm talent. I'm just a little nervous about the clutchness.
Okay, well, we can move on to. I'll add to Patrick Mahomes why he's at 4 for me before you get into talk about Joe Burrow. But Mahomes, I have him at 4. I think the top 4 for me. And I guess we can throw Brady in at 5. I think these were kind of my clear top 5. But Mahomes, I'm not doubting his talent because we know it's there. I just think I kind of said this in my video yesterday. There's just 3 quarterbacks that I think are going to be better. And I think that has to do with losing Tyreek Hill. Like, I can't sit here and say anything negative about Mahomes other than he is a little quick to escape the pocket when he's not even being, like, under pressure sometimes and try to make that backyard play, which he can make it 9 times, maybe not 9 times out of 10, but a way better percent of times than most other quarterbacks make that amazing play. But it just comes down to, I think 3 quarterbacks are going to be better. I think these 3 quarterbacks have, maybe you could say the Chargers and Chiefs are debatable for weapons if you're including the tight end with Travis Kelce, but I'd still take the Chargers, especially with the pass catching ability out of the backfield with Eckler and the 2 receivers. But I think the Bills and Bengals clearly have better weapons than the Chiefs. I think that 3 quarterbacks ahead of him are just going to have slightly better seasons statistically and on the eye test on the field this year. So that's what I have. That's why I have Mahomes at number 4. Maybe it's not the best reasoning, but I can't really sit here and say Mahomes isn't good enough to be number 1 because he definitely is. So moving on to you, I touched on Joe Burrow, how he's fairly complete quarterback, literally no flaws in my opinion. So what do you have to say about Joe Burrow?
First thing about Joe Burrow is I love Joe Burrow. I mean, if you look right here, that's my Joe Burrow jersey. If you look at my LSU Tigers pennant. If you look over at Nick's screen, that's Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
I love Joe Burrow. I love how he plays. He reminds me so much of like a more athletic Drew Brees to me. He has the poise, he has the accuracy. He doesn't have the best arm in football, but he doesn't need the best arm in football. When you have the same weapons that he has, he can just be that guy. Like you said, like he's very crisp. I don't see any flaws either. And this is year 2 coming off the injury about how sneaky athletic Joe Burrow is too. The guy he just was on a torn or a healing torn ACL. He's going to come back almost fully healthy this year, and I'm expecting some like big numbers. He has the best offense in football behind him with best wide receiver trio, I think almost in NFL history. I mean, these 3 wide receivers, all 3 bring so many different things to the table. Jamar Chase just being Jamar Chase, T. Higgins being the deep threat, tall man, and then you got Tyler Boyd in the slot. Like those 3 guys, all 3 do their part, like one of the best in football. And Joe Burrow, these top 4 for me could flip in my brain.
I was about to say, the way you're talking about Burrow, it sounds almost like he should be over Allen and Rodgers the way you talked about them.
Yeah, and I was just about to get there. These 4 guys, they could switch like any other day for me. I seriously thought about putting Burrow at 1. I seriously thought about putting Rodgers at 1. I seriously thought about putting Allen at 1. I even had a little
and then we got the old guy at 5 that we just both kind of put at 5. Like he's still top 5. He's still playing.
He's still Tom Brady.
He's not going to be number 1, but we'll get to him.
Yeah, these top 4 guys for me are so interchangeable. They all 4. We're in a time with NFL football right now where the top pool of quarterbacks are just so good. It's hard to rank them by numbers. I don't know if that's just me or if that's like everyone else is starting to realize that right now.
I think it is hard to rank them by numbers. It's easier to rank them by tiers, and I think my top 4 are all my tier 1 guys that I think just separate themselves from everyone else, in my opinion.
I agree.
But anyway, we have the same guy at number 5, Tom Brady, obviously retired, came out of retirement. Tom Brady, do you think Do you think we're lower on him than some people? Because I think some people have him still at 1 or 2 or even 3.
I think we have him perfect.
Because
These top 4 guys,
the thing,
they're you go.
go. Okay, the thing is with Brady, because when you're looking at him, I don't think he's a more talented quarterback at this point than any of the quarterbacks above him. Because
I agree.
I think he's
Excuse the
still
Oh my
the
gosh,
best
the
pocket
thunder.
passer. Yeah, we got the thunder in the
Can
background.
you hear it?
Yeah,
Ooh.
I can hear the thunder. But with Brady, he's still probably the best pocket passer in football, one of the most accurate quarterbacks in football. Still got a good deep ball. He's got those things, which puts him in the top 5 for me. And I think he has very good receivers, and I think he has a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. So factoring in postseason play is what puts him in the top 5 for me.
Yep.
But I know that we all know, obviously, the mobility isn't there. He's 45 years old. I don't expect out of him. But when comparing him to other quarterbacks, if I see a guy like Joe Burrow, who I think is just as accurate as Tom Brady, close to him pocket passing wise, and has probably a better deep ball than Tom Brady, and did more under with less, that makes me say, okay, Andrew Burrow's more athletic. I'm going to put him over Tom Brady,
And he's
even
20
if
years
he's not the
younger.
historic, even if he doesn't have the historic resume of
Yep.
Tom Brady or whatever. Predicting for this season, so that's what kind of separates
Yep.
the guys above Brady for me. And one more thing with Brady is, like I said, him winning the Super Bowl this year could really, if he wins the Super Bowl, puts up like 40, 45 touchdowns, yeah, he could maybe be higher than this just because the statistics are amazing. But it was just hard for me to put him over the guys above him. But what do you have to say about Brady that I didn't cover?
I won't talk much about Brady because I think you almost said it perfectly. The thing about Tom Brady is that you could put Justin here at 5, but I can't put Justin Herbert here because Tom Brady is Tom freaking Brady. I mean, the guy is the GOAT. He's the GOAT for the reason. And like you said, this team is it's a Super Bowl ready roster, and they upgraded at receiver, bringing in Mr. Gage from Atlanta.
Russell Gage from Atlanta, and they added Julio Jones.
Yep. And you just recently added Julio Jones. These two guys I think Russell Gage is criminally underrated. He sparked a really dead Atlanta year. And Julio Jones, yeah, he's at prime, but you give him a Tom Brady as a quarterback, who knows what can happen. I love the Bucs roster, and I hate to say that because, as a Saints fan, it sucks. But I'm Tom Brady. You've pretty much said everything, so you ready to move on?
We're moving on to the running backs. So the running back rankings, we have pretty much the same top. Well, we do have the same top 3, just different order, which is kind of weird. But we have them all in a different spot. I found that kind of funny. But then 4 and 5, we have completely different. Like, I went young and upcomers, and you went the older guy. Well, not old, but like guys who have been doing it longer than the younger guys. Yeah. But anyway, let's kind of just cover Jonathan Taylor together because I think that we both think he has a good chance of being 1. You have him 2, which I respect. Yeah. But Jonathan Taylor, last year was the best running back in football, no doubt. Every statistic rushing-wise, every advanced statistic rushing-wise, pretty much every advanced statistic rushing-wise, he was the best in football. So much. He has all to his game. He has the speed and power ability. He does run behind a good offensive line, which helps him. But I still loved him coming out of college. He was electric. And I think he went to a good team in the Colts, and he's just developed into the player I thought he would be. And he has a receiving ability, too, which is very good to see out of a running back like him. Maybe he doesn't have – he had good moments last year, but I think you could still say Derrick Henry's better right now. Because you look at Derrick Henry, he has those just game-defining moments, game after game, season after season over the last couple of years, that's why I respect you putting him at 1. But with a projection, I'm thinking Jonathan Taylor, even though he was better than Henry last year because Henry was injured. In general, I think you could say Henry's the best just because of his maybe sample size over the last couple of years. But Taylor, I think this year, he kind of takes over 2 years in a row now. After this year, I think we're going to be saying Jonathan Taylor's the best running back in football. As some people have him 1 now, and I think he's going to be the clear, well, maybe not clear 1, but I think he's going to pass Henry up after this year. What do you say about Jonathan Taylor before you get to Henry?
So, Jonathan Taylor at 2 for me. These top 3 guys, there's a reason why our top 3 guys are the same top 3 guys. These guys are separated from the rest of the pack. Jonathan Taylor for me at 2. It was hard for me to put him under Derrick Henry because of the season he had last year. But then I realized Derrick Henry's season last year before he got hurt on a
Was historic.
it was historic how good he was going. He was still like 3rd in rushing yards by the time, what was it, week 9, 10, and he got hurt in week 6. He had almost 1,000 rushes by the time week 7 came around. And then he got hurt. That is almost unheard of, especially now in this NFL where
he would probably broke the all-time record in a
season. 100%. He didn't even need the extra game. He would have done it anyways. He's still the king. I think he's going to bounce back from the injury, and he's still going to have that crown over his head. He's still going to do the stiff arms. He's still going to be Derrick Henry. But Jonathan Taylor at 2, it's hard because Jonathan Taylor, they're kind of similar in a weird way. Jonathan Taylor's a very much of a north-south kind of running back, put down the shoulder, but he has one thing over Derrick Henry, and that is really good hands. I think Jonathan Taylor's a little bit more like shifty than Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry, personally, I think he's faster than Jonathan Taylor, but I think he's shiftier than Derrick Henry. But I'm going to put Derrick Henry over Jonathan Taylor right now, only because he was on a historical tear last year.
Speaking of hands, whenever I was looking at both of our lists, putting together the graphic, I was thinking, wow, we both don't have Christian McCaffrey on here. Like, that's a little surprising because I kind of forgot about him, honestly, and then I remembered him as we were putting the graphic together, and I'm like, do I want to put him on here? But it's fairly close. It wouldn't shock me. Christian McCaffrey's fully healthy and is on here.
For me.
Number 7. So you have someone at 6, I assume, that maybe I have or don't have. But anyway, we can talk about, you covered why Derrick Henry was 1. I have Derrick Henry at 3, so I'll kind of add a little bit to that. The thing with Derrick Henry is, with Jonathan Taylor can play all 3 downs. Derrick Henry, because of his lack of receiving ability, he's more of a 2-down running back. He can play 3rd down, 3rd and short situations. And his pass catching, he could do it if you really asked him to, but he's not going to be known for that or do it to the extent of a guy like Jonathan Taylor. But anyway, so that's Derrick Henry. I have him at 3. I think Henry and Chubb will close for 2 and 3. Even wouldn't shock me if Henry was 1 or even Chubb was 1. Now that Kareem Hunt wants out of Cleveland. But anyway, we can cover Nick Chubb now. I have him at 2. You have him at 3. I think we can agree when we think of running back, just pure running ability. I guess you can maybe throw Dalvin Cook down in there, but I think both 3 are the top 3. Just pure rushing ability. Take out receiving.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry really show that you can still be a top 3 running back in the league today without being a premier pass catcher from the position. Because Nick Chubb, just watching him run the football, he runs so smoothly, and he's really good. And he puts up his yards per carry numbers seem to always be good every year. He just kind of doesn't get the crazy amount of touches.
Yeah,
I wish he would get more touches. I just want to see Nick Chubb. If Kevin Stefanski somehow watches this podcast, I want to see Nick Chubb get a ton of carries, especially if Deshaun Watson's out. Just feed the ball to Nick Chubb, and it wouldn't shock me if he's 1. I actually projected him to be 1 last year. Wasn't quite that. It was probably 2 or 3. But I like Nick Chubb a lot. Just his run after contact ability is what really stands out too. But I got Nick Chubb at 2. What do you have to say about Nick Chubb at 3?
Nick Chubb at 3. He's, like I said, these top 3 are all so close. The reason why I have Nick Chubb at 3 rather than 1 is the lack of pass catching ability. I think out of a pure back, he is second behind Derrick Henry. I think he's better than Jonathan Taylor, but you also have to include
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think Taylor could pass him up this year, though. That's especially why I have Taylor at 1.
Maybe.
I think Taylor's gonna pass him up.
I also think
I'm interrupting you. Just keep going.
You're good. I think Nick Chubb is going to get a lot more touches this year. As you said, Kareem Hunt possibly wants to get out of Cleveland. And then the biggest thing, who knows what's going on with Deshaun Watson at this point? I mean, he's not playing week 1. He's probably not playing week 1 through 6. We know that for a fact. He's gonna be the workhorse. He's gonna be the guy that the Browns are going to rely on. So his touches are going to increase. And if they don't, I don't know what the Browns are doing at this point. The Browns should just stop being the Browns and just sell the team. But I think Nick Chubb, he's going to prove a lot of people wrong this year, and I kind of agree with you. I think Nick Chubb can go as high as 1, but I don't think he's going to go lower than 3.
I think we summed up the top 3 good. So now let's quickly go through 4 and 5. So I'll kind of go with my 4 and 5, and then you'll go with yours after me. But my 4 and 5, I'm going with the young guys. Najee Harris, I think he was top 5 last year, especially statistically. He caught I think 70 or so passes. He could rush the ball. He could catch the ball. I think he is the premier guy in that Steelers offense, and that's over a guy like Deontay Johnson. I think he's, even with a bad offensive line, his yards per carry were bad last year, like 3.9 or something. The offensive line does kind of hold him back from maybe taking that Jonathan Taylor-esque jump into the maybe top 2 or 1, because I am still very high on Najee Harris, and I think he has the talent and he has the workload to be in the top 5. So I think him at 4 is definitely well warranted. My hot take last week was he goes for 2,000 yards combined, which honestly, thinking about it, if he does go for 2,000 yards combined, he could have a case for 2 or 1. So I'm that high on Najee Harris this year. It's hard to put him over the 3 elite rushers of the football that we have above him, especially factoring the offensive line with the Steelers. But I got Najee Harris at 4, Javonte Williams at 5. These guys were neck to neck for me in the draft. They were kind of neck to neck for me after the rookie season. But I think if Javonte was the pure guy, just a pure guy, he would maybe have a case for being over Najee Harris, but him splitting with Melvin Gordon kind of makes me put Najee Harris over Javonte Williams. But I think they're very close, and I think Javonte Williams, we talked about him a lot over the last couple of weeks, but very good run after contact ability, speed, and power, and he can catch the ball too. I got Javonte Williams at 5. Now you'll go a little bit more of the veterans. You got Alvin Kamara, who, interesting, I'm going to ask you something. If Alvin Kamara is suspended, which I think he would have been suspended by now if he's going to be suspended. Yeah. I think it could be kind of like a Tom Brady deflate gate thing where they didn't suspend him the initial year, but they suspended him the year after. But if Alvin Kamara is suspended, that would probably take him out just because the production wouldn't be there, right? And who would be who would be your next guy, just so we can get that guy in?
So my next guy, Harris. Pretty much everything you just said about Najee Harris, I would say, but I think I just like Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara. Go ahead and go into why I have Dalvin Cook at 5, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Well, what about Kamara? It's just he's obviously very good runner and pass catcher. Just an electric player for that team. And if Alvin Kamara is healthy, he could be in there. So we saw a 5-6 touchdown game a couple of years ago.
I'm gonna save Alvin Kamara actually second because I actually have a hot take with him.
Okay, we'll talk about Dalvin.
So I'm gonna quickly talk. Yeah,
Dalvin Cook. I'll say something. It was so hard to leave Dalvin Cook off. Him and Javonte Williams was so close. Javonte Williams, him not getting the workload really wanted make me put Dalvin Cook on here. Mm-hmm. But I think the Vikings are going to be maybe a passing offense this year, which will still include Dalvin Cook. But anyway, get on to Dalvin Cook. We'll talk about
Dalvin Cook. For me, at 5 is the only place he could be. He can't go higher. He can't go lower. He has that injury nag, something that's not good for a running back. He has an injury nag. Dalvin Cook, as they're really good, as a pass catcher, he's also really good. I just don't think he's as good as Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. And Dalvin Cook is just Dalvin Cook. I mean, he's just got to stay healthy.
Very good in both aspects of run the ball and pass catching. And his burst is so good. His speed and quickness, acceleration.
And he has really good power. So they got Alvin Kamara. Yeah. My hot take about Alvin Kamara is that he is good. He also kind of including him with the top 3 as well. I could see him being as far up as 1 this year. Alvin Kamara post losing Mark Ingram to the Ravens struggled with it. He wasn't the same. You could tell he didn't have his man, and I think that affected him. Mark Ingram came back to the Saints last season. Other than Alvin Kamara's 6 touchdown game against the Vikings at Christmas, he really wasn't the same. Mark Ingram came back, and the best example of him looking like his normal self was against the Buccaneers. Second at Tampa. Alvin went off, even though the offensive touchdown wasn't there. Mark Ingram was his great second hand man. I think that these two guys this year are going to be the best backfield of football. And that's not me as a Saints, me being like looking at the stats. Kamara is going to finally, have that season, the 800 rushing yards, 800 receiving yards, because Alvin Kamara is the best receiving back in football. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. The guy could quite literally be.
What about Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, McCaffrey's got to stay on the field, man. He has to stay on the field. He's healthy. I agree. These two guys, Kamara and Christian McCaffrey, if they can stay healthy, actually produce this
so
year,
good.
They're
like just 2019 Christian McCaffrey was just so electric. 1,000 yards receiving and rushing. He received 1,000 yards as a running back.
And I think Alvin Kamara this year can do that. I think a big part of that goes to Mark Ingram, because Mark Ingram is such, he's like the Robin to Alvin Kamara's Batman. I love it. I love the duo. Alvin Kamara, I think he's the best running back in football. I think he's better than Christian McCaffrey at route running. I could see him, this year stepping up as a role as more of a receiver, like a wide receiver, than a running back at some point, and let Mark Ingram deal with the more rushing load. But I can get into the Saints the way they should run offense in a later date. But I like Alvin Kamara at 4. I think he's gonna have a running back year. But I'm excited.
So yeah, with Alvin Kamara, like you were saying, the last year Mark Ingram was there was 2018. Going into the 2019 season was whenever I really got into ranking players and stuff. And I remember Kamara being my number 1 running back. And then after 2019, I think I was between McCaffrey and Henry with his playoff run when they went to the championship game. Then after 2020, offensive player of the year was Derrick Henry. I had him 1, obviously. And now I think it's between Taylor and Henry. But anyway, so we can move on to the next position. One of my favorite positions, probably. There's just so many good guys. This is my favorite position because there's literally 7 guys that could be number 1. And then you factor in that my guy who was not even in my top 25 last year, Cooper Kupp, I think I'm not 27 or 28, ended up being number 1. And Deebo Samuel was amazing, and I didn't even have him in my top 32. I think I was higher on Ayuk. So I'm kind of just roasting my bad receiver takes right now. But why are you laughing? But anyway, our receiver rankings are just so different. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
We'll just start. The 2 guys we both have in the top 3.
Yeah.
We can start at 5? Okay.
We can start at 5 with
Let's start at 5.
Stephon
Diggs, obviously what stands out is his route running. He's a lethal deep threat. Can really be a good route runner, as I said. And I like Stephon Diggs' just overall game a lot. And I think clearly the number 1 threat in that offense, has a good connection with Josh Allen. I think he wasn't quite as good statistically last year as in 2020 when he was top 2, 3. But I still think he's going to be a top 5 guy, and I'm high on the Bills this year, as everyone pretty much is. But I think the Bills are going to be very good, and that connection with Josh Allen and Diggs is going to make him top 5. So what do you have to say about Diggs?
I don't really have to say much about Diggs other than his route running is so crisp. It's addicting to watch him.
I want to add one more thing on Diggs too.
Yeah, you can go. I really have nothing else to say.
We all know with Stephon Diggs, he's just if there's a clutchness in a receiver, it's Stephon Diggs. If you want a receiver on the last play of the game to catch the ball on the sideline, Stephon Diggs in a playoff game on the sideline from Case Keenum, it's Stephon Diggs. And now Case Keenum's the Bills' backup. So if Josh Allen were to go down, we got that connection. But Stephon Diggs, clutch receiver. We can move on to number 4. Graham knew what I was doing there from the start. But anyway, I got 4. I got Terry, Scary, McLaurin. Graham, move your camera. I got Terry McLaurin. This is probably the hot take of the
video
so
of the
far.
Podcast. Yeah,
not the whole podcast.
Oh,
maybe a little bit. This is the hottest take of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Terry McLaurin, right now, I have him, I think, 7th or 8th. And last year, I had him 4, I think. And I was maybe a little too high on him last year. Actually, was I? Maybe, but I don't think it's unreasonable. I think his overall talent, just overall route running ability, he can go get the ball contested for a guy his size, lethal speed. He runs like a 4.3 something, can really run after the catch. And he's dealt with very poor quarterback play. Let's just look at something real quick. So Taylor McLaurin, over his career, he's been in the league since 2019. He has dealt with probably the worst quarterback play. Him and DJ Moore, really. You look at Taylor McLaurin's quarterback in 2021. PFF had him ranked as the 27th team, with the quarterback being, who was it this past year? Taylor Heineke. 2020, it was the 28th ranked with like Alex Smith. Forget who else they had that year, Haskins. 2019, it was 28th. So you look at that 28th, 27th, and 28th again, I think I said. So he's dealt with very poor quarterback play. His talent pops off the screen, still able to put up 1,000 yards. I think now getting Carson Wentz, who's just average-ish quarterback, his numbers are really going to pop, and he's going to have a huge year. I think having Jahan Dotson there kind of draws attention away too. So I think Taylor McLaurin's going to have a stud at number 4. And if this is wrong, we can come back and talk about it at the end of the season. But I think Taylor McLaurin is going for a good 1,100 yards this year. So what do you have to say about your number 4, who I have higher than you? I have you 2 LSU guys higher than you. So let's just cover the LSU guys.
Yeah, let's do that.
So who's better, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase?
I have Justin Jefferson better than Jamar. I think these two guys in the next, 5 years will be the face of like wide receiver. Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, those are definitely the face.
Yeah. These top 4 right here, kind of like the same as the quarterbacks, they're hard to rank because into Cooper Kupp, because you don't have him on your top 5 and I do. We can get onto him later when we get towards the top. 2 right here, the 2 LSU guys. Jamar Chase, good. Like I mean, when he played against, something about him playing, he like turns up a different level. Over 200.
Hold up.
Yeah.
There's a personal attack.
Oh my gosh. He's talking about the Minnesota Miracle joke that he made about Stephon Diggs. Like I said, I'm a diehard Saints fan. Talking about this. We're talking about Jamar Chase, our wide receiver. But anyways, Jamar Chase, the reason why I don't have him above Justin Jefferson is because I personally love watching Justin Jefferson run routes. I think Justin Jefferson is a little bit more crisp, a little bit more precise with his feet. He has a lot more separation with cornerbacks does. And I also think Justin Jefferson's hands are a lot better than Chase. Jamar Chase has that little inconsistency with Butterfingers. We saw that against the Chargers last year when he just whoop, and he went right into the quite remember who the cornerback was at the time. But yeah, I love Justin Jefferson so much. I'm so excited to see him this year. He could go up as 1 on this list by the end of the year, and
I think you covered him perfectly. Just Justin Jefferson, the most fun route runner to watch in football, and I think he's the best route runner in football. Can definitely argue him with Davante Adams, but Jefferson, Chase, you summed up perfectly. I think Jefferson's a little bit more complete all around with better hands than Chase, better route runner at this point. Both very fast. Chase is probably a little bit faster. Both can go up and get the ball. Jefferson can go up and get the ball good. He's just so good as route running that kind of outshines his contested ability. But Chase is definitely more of a premier contested catch guy than a guy like Justin Jefferson. But both still very good. I have them at 1 and 2. I think they're going to battle for that 1 spot for years to come, like you kind of covered. So I'm not going to add much to them. Everyone, a lot of people have probably heard me rave about Justin Jefferson. Last week we did. But yeah, all-time talent. I think going for 2,000 yards, but we'll see. But that leaves 2 guys left. I have a guy at number 3 or number 1. How about we go to Davante Adams, talk about how you have him at number 1, I have him at number 3. Then we'll kind of hit on Cooper Kupp, how high I had him off the list, and you have him at 2. So Adams, what do you have to say about Adams? I'll let you go first since you have him at number 1.
I think he's the best receiver in football because he's been the best receiver for years. I mean, what can this guy not do? He's fast, he's tall, he's got the jump. He has the amazing. Probably got one of the best. He's got one of the best. Maybe Justin Jefferson, maybe not. That's a debate.
Adams has the best release off the line of scrimmage.
I agree. I think Justin Jefferson's feet are a little bit more quicker than Adams when you get into the route. But I think Devontae Adams overall, the hands, the speed, the athleticism, he's built to play wide receiver. And it's a football, not to mention that he's getting that good old Fresno State connection back with Derek.
Good old Fresno State.
Yeah, I mean, these guys they got a connection, and I'm excited to see what Devontae Adams is going to keep it up. I think he's still going to be the best receiver in football. I love the fit in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas, they're in crazy throwing offense, with a little bit of run with Josh Jacobs. But I'm excited to see what he does this year. What about 3?
Yeah, I have Adams at 3. So Adams, I think all of the top 3. I mean, Justin Jefferson, I was kind of clear with him on 1. I'm like, this guy's 1. But 2 and 3, very close. I think Jamar Chase has more. They both have chemistry because Carr's played with Adams, but Chase, Jefferson just played together in college recently, now playing in the NFL. They already played together. So I think the connection is kind of already more established, even though Devontae Adams and Carr are going to have a good connection, I believe, by the end of the season. But definitely before the end of the season. But Adams, I mean, there's nothing really negative to say besides I think he's not as explosive as a player as Jamar Chase, really just speed-wise. And Jamar Chase, I forgot to mention with him, after the catch, he's electric. He can not only go up and get the contested catch, because we talked about him as a contested catch guy, but just he can take a screen like 80 yards. Like, remember that play against the Ravens where he broke like a ton of tackles? Like, He has that ability. He's just a very good player. So I think the electric ability of Jamar Chase and the maybe a little bit more chemistry early on with Burrow than Carr with Adams, I'm going to have Chase just slightly over Adams. But Adams, obviously, very good release, good route running, can catch the ball contested. As a Bears fan, it would always seem like him with the Packers in big moments. Rodgers to Adams would always happen. But, yeah, nothing really negative to say about Adams, so I just got him at 3. But now we can move on to number 2 for you, and an honorable mention for me, probably my number 6 or 7 guy. Let's say number 6, Cooper Kupp. So I'll start why I didn't have him on the list. Obviously, Cooper Kupp was historically good last year, numbers-wise, but that is one season. Looking at the other seasons, has he been that guy? Is he going to continue to be that guy? He's going to continue to be very good, in my opinion. That's why I have him just missing the top 5. But I couldn't quite put him over these guys. I think the Rams still going to be a good passing offense, but Kupp, it's just I'm banking on one really good season to say, okay, this guy's going to be top 5 again. I could definitely see it. I argued between him and Diggs, but nothing really negative to say about Kupp. I just got him quite missing out. Why would I have Diggs over him? I think Diggs is a little bit as good of a route runner as Kupp is. I'd definitely prefer Diggs, and I think that Diggs, I kind of think that the Bills rely on Diggs more than the Rams rely on Kupp, which is weird saying how much the Rams threw the ball to Kupp last year. But I think the Rams could be fine running the ball and throwing to guys like Allen Robinson. Well, if Diggs was out of the lineup for the Bills, I think that they'd struggle more as an offense than the Rams would without Kupp. But still, both very good players. I could have Kupp 5, could have Diggs 5. I chose Diggs. So what do you have to say about Kupp at 2?
Cooper Kupp at 2. Stats off for you.
I think we all know his stats.
This man had 145 receptions for nearly 2,000 yards, averaging 13.4 yards. His longest touchdown was 60 yards, 16 touchdowns. What else do I need to say? I mean, that right.
Well, what else do we need to say? 3 words. Actually, 4 words. It's not last year. That's why I don't have him top 5.
Right.
Like I said, last year he was my number 1 player on my top 100 for last season. But is he going to replicate that? Maybe.
No.
Well, maybe not. I don't think he's going to replicate that. If he does, then okay, we can put Cooper Kupp in Canton. If he replicates that season last year, but it's really nothing I can say bad about him because he's still a very good player. It's just we're banking on a small I guess, sample size, but it is the most recent sample size. It's with a different quarterback than his old sample size, which was still good. He had 1,000 yards one year in like 2019 or 2019 or something. But Cooper Kupp, very good player. Do you want to add any more on him? Because I'm sure everyone knows how good Cooper Kupp is, or can we move on to tight ends?
I want to say one more thing about Cooper Kupp, and the reason why I still have him at 2 is that I don't think he'll have as great of a season as he did last year, but I definitely think him and Matthew Stafford are going to still have that connection. So yeah, moving on, as you said, to the next position, that is going to be our tight ends. Nick, we have the same number 2. Do you want to explain why we have Travis Kelce?
You said what? Sorry, I was.
Yeah. I was saying, why we have Mark Andrews over Travis Kelce, even though we have
Mark Andrews. Those just so close. Andrews and Kelce neck to neck for me. I think Mark Andrews a little better last season. We're predicting this season after I just talked about don't talk about last season. But Mark Andrews, I think they're both going to be the key threats in the offense. Chiefs losing Tyreek Hill. Andrews is really the only elite pass catcher on the Ravens. So I think that the Ravens rely a lot on Mark Andrews, and I think Lamar Jackson healthy a full season is only going to help Mark Andrews. I'm hoping Lamar Jackson is healthy this full season. But Mark Andrews, I think he's also a little bit better of a blocker than Kelce, but neither are really elite in that category. But it can really go either way. It's like a flip a coin. We're predicting between two neck-to-neck guys. We both came out with Andrews on top, so we think that the coin is better than 50-50 odds somehow.
Yep. I'm not going to really mention on those two guys. You pretty much just said exactly what I want to say.
Kelce, he's going to have a very good receiving year too, like Mark Andrews, because without Tyreek Hill. But Kelce is a little aging, but I still think he's going to have a good year or two left in him.
Yeah, I agree. So moving on to 3 and 4, we have the same two guys, but we have them flip-flopped. I'm going to go ahead and explain why I have Kyle Pitts. Personally, George, he is not as great of a receiver as Kyle Pitts. We obviously know that. But have him over Kyle Pitts is because I love middle plays football. This man will do anything. He will go down in the trenches. He will block your defensive end. He will do anything you ask him to do. Not even to mention he is so rushing the football. And he has, that weird tight end breakaway speed. But Kyle Pitts at 4, man, this guy is, I think by the next 2 years, he will be the number 1 tight end in football, and it will not be close because he is so good. Raw with athleticism. At this point, I almost wonder if he would to receiver because he's too big for a receiver, but I don't feel like he's too
receiver
small.
with how good of a run blocker he is.
But the thing about him though is he's only a good run blocker only because of the scheme that they had. The Atlanta Falcons did with someone like Cardell Patterson in the backfield, where they excuse me, the field out a lot more. That gave Kyle Pitts' speed a really good chance to shing. I don't necessarily think he's an amazing run blocking tight end. I think George Kittle is better at blocking significantly, and that's why I have him at 4 compared to George Kittle at 3. But what about you? Pitts 3 and George Kittle 4.
So with George Kittle, I'm kind of arguing against my own list here because I think Kittle, talent-wise, definitely has a case for 1, and I think he is the best with his ability to pass catch and block. We saw it in 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
he was a lethal pass-catching threat in the offense during the regular season, along with a run-blocking threat. Then the postseason, when they just literally ran the ball to the Super Bowl, George Kittle was a crucial piece in the run-blocking ability in that playoff run. And with Kittle, I have him at 4, mainly because I don't think he's quite with an adjustment at quarterback and with them having some other good pass catchers, Debo, Ayuk. I don't think George Kittle's workload is going to be what the 3 above him are, and I don't think that he's going to get as many yards as the guys above him. So I think his statistics, like every offseason, I have Kittle ranked 1 or 2, usually 1, and he usually doesn't end up being that because maybe he doesn't get the targets or he just doesn't put up this kind of 2019 his yards or 2018 I think it was, he broke the record that for receiving yards for tight end, and then Kelce broke it, and Kittle still caught a lot of yards in 2019. But I think the last 2 years, the yards are kind of cut down a little bit. Still think he's going to be very good yards-wise. Have him number 4, but just the ability to block and the overall talent, you could definitely argue he's over the guys above him. But I think that Kyle Pitts, being on that Falcons team, putting up 1,000 yards with Matt Ryan as a rookie, his quarterback play declined, going from Ryan to Mariota, Desmond Riddle. But I think that Kyle Pitts is still going to be a better receiver than George Kittle this year. Kyle Pitts, talking about a guy who can play receiver, very good route runner for that position, and I think he's overall just going to put up a ton of yards this year and be number 3. So you got Kyle Pitts at 4. Do you have anything to say or add?
Nope, I'm pretty good at them where they're at.
So go on to number 5. We have different ones. This initially shocked me, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, I could see it. Early draft pick. A lot of people been projecting him to break out the last couple of years. He has kind of broken out, but he hasn't quite been top 5.
He
but
hasn't
you
hit
have
his
him top
stride.
5.
Yep, I do.
You think with maybe he's the premier threat in his offense, Jameson Williams being out, and you just like his talent?
Yeah, I personally like the way his offense is going to be this year. I think leaning a little bit more on Ron St. Brown and TJ Hawkinson this year. TJ Hawkinson, I think finally he's going to be healthy this year. He's finally going to be able to show like what he has to offer. And I'm going to quickly read off in a limited season with a terrible, Lions team. He had 12 games played his rookie season, 32 receptions, 367 yards, averaging 11 and a half yards a game, or 11 and a half yards. To me, that is really good stat line for a tight end for a rookie year. It's not, Pitts with his crazy amount of stats, but it was not necessarily that good. You follow that up with a 16-game play with 67 receiving yards and 700 averaging almost 11 yards a carry as well with 6 touchdowns. TJ Hawkinson definitely took that growth, and he definitely took that step up that you needed to take as a football player. This year, more of a down year, got hurt, and Jared Goff is his quarterback. Nothing really there. I think this year Jared Goff is actually going to take a step up as a quarterback. I actually have Jared Goff as a top 25 quarterback in football. That's a topic for another time. The Lions this year are going to be pretty good. And I think TJ Hawkinson is going to be a...
So I got Dalen Waller at 5. Dalen Waller, the receiving tight end, was a little banged up last year, kind of for his numbers, but I think this year is going to be back in that top 5. I don't think there's much controversial about that. Another name I want to throw out that just missed for me, I think it was kind of a big top 5, maybe 6 in my opinion, and Dallas Goedert, very good for the Eagles. He just missed, very good receiver.
Yep.
Ever since he took over when Zach Ertz got traded, it's really showed that he plays a big role in that offense, and he can block too. So I like Dallas Goedert a lot. Just missed. But moving on to the offensive linemen, want to get us started with the O-lineman, Graham?
Yes. So the O-lineman, I guess talk about your number 1 and mine of Quentin Nelson. So why do you have Quentin Nelson number 1?
I got Quentin Nelson. I got Quentin Nelson number 1. The first 3 years of his career, it was like everyone knew he was the best offensive lineman in football. He was like had a case for the best not the best player, but top 5 to 7 player in football. Last year, a little banged up, contributed to him not being as good as he was his first 3 years. But I think with Matt Ryan getting the ball out quick, that's not only going to help him. Having a guy like Jonathan Taylor is not only going to help him, and having Quentin Nelson will help Jonathan Taylor. But I think he's just going to get back to that top alignment in football this year. And pretty confidently have Quentin Nelson at 1. Just reading off some PFF grades. Looking at his 2018, he was an 81.6 grade as a rookie. 2019, 91.2 grade. 2020, 87.5. And then last year down to 69.1. But I think they do factor in injury. So had a rough year last year. But I think being healthy this year, going to bounce back and be the best offensive lineman in football.
I have Quentin Nelson at 2, only because of his down year last year. And the guy who was above him, Trent Williams, had the best offensive line season that we've almost never seen. I love Quentin Nelson. I love the way he plays, the tenacity. He's the definition of a right guard. He's just insanely talented. He's young. He's talented. You just got to go. he's just got to go. You got to get healthy. Got to show why he is probably one of the best offensive linemen in football.
But anyway, we can get to Trent Williams. I have him at 3. Trent Williams, he was coming off an historic season. I believe was the highest graded PFF player in the football player in PFF history.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to say. But Trent Williams going to have a very good year again. I just don't think it's going to be quite historic. He's always been a good tackle, but really had a historic year last year. I think he could be one, but similar to Cup, I think it's more of an outlier historic year. Otherwise, he's just going to be a very good player. So I got him at 3. You got him at 1, though, so you really like what he did last year.
Yeah, I loved what he did last year. I love him too. You know, they would run the 2 tackle on the left side of the field, and then they would send him in motion, like that very popular video of him trucking three Packer defenders. I mean, that just goes to show you who he is. He is just a beast. And I personally, as someone, would not want to be lined up against him because he's just strong. He's huge, scary. Like he's a big man. I think even though he's up there in age, he's going to be 34 going into the age 35 throughout the season. Yeah, that's a little old for an offensive lineman, but I think he's still, and I think he's going to be, still the best tackle in football and just the best offensive lineman in general.
Yeah, so just a quick note, we're going to just go over the offensive positions today because we're already over an hour. We're just going to accept the fact that we can't get a full podcast in under an hour at this point. But we're going to split the offense and defense up. So next week will actually be defensive guys. So we can just quickly finish our linemen and then wrap it up. But anyway, moving on next, a guy that you didn't have on your list, Tristan Wirfs. I think since he stepped in football, you can say him and Ryan Ramczyk have been the 2 best right tackles in football. And I think Wirfs has kind of been slightly better than Ramczyk. Ramczyk was really good in 2019, been good the last couple of years, but I'd say Wirfs is better than Ramczyk. And I think Wirfs developing, having Tom Brady throwing the ball, obviously can help out because Tom Brady can get the ball out quick when he needs to. So I got Tristan Wirfs at 2. Why do you not have Tristan Wirfs on your list, and did he just miss?
He is number 6, and Rashawn Slater that I guess I'll talk about together because they're both 6 and 7 on my. They both just missed, honestly, because I believe in comeback story for Teron. He's going to come back healthy. He's playing on an offensive line that has, really good offensive weapons slate. So he's going to be able to, go back to his normal left tackle, passing what he's pass blocking left tackle. He's the blind side. And excuse me again. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I have the hiccups, guys. He's going to be able to, defend Tua. Even though Tua is left-handed, I get it, he's not truly the blind side, but he's a pass block tackle, and I kind of chose him and Ryan Ramczyk because Tristan Wirfs and Ryan are the 2 best right tackles in football. I think Ryan Ramczyk just overall is just a little bit more complete and a little bit more poised and a little bit more crisp lineman than Tristan Wirfs. So that's the reason why I don't have Slater or Wirfs. I like Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. Moving on, Nick. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I'll start with Zach Martin. Yeah, Zach Martin. I can start here and then you can cover him. So I have him at 4 just because I guess I'm very high on Wirfs, but Zach Martin been very good for a long time for the Cowboys. I expect that to continue. A few years ago, the year he got hurt, they had him playing some tackle too. They're that confident in him as a guard playing tackle. And I just like Zach Martin a lot. Other than that game he had against Aaron Donald a couple of years ago, he always looks just very good. And I think his consistency really makes me think he's going to continue to be a top 5 offensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys. So what do you have to say about Zach Martin?
I completely agree. As much as the Dallas Cowboys, I don't like them. Zach Martin's just, man, he's just a really good guard. Him and Quentin Nelson are the 2 best guards of football. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. If you have a disagreement with me, you can catch me outside because unfortunately.
Okay. Joel Bitonio is very close. I think those are big 3. I think Joel Bitonio is there.
I like him. Zach Martin's he's always been so good.
I guess the consistency of Zach Martin and the peak of Quentin Nelson, you could say slightly edges Bitonio, but Bitonio, I think he had a 93 point something PFF.
Yeah, he had a really good season last year.
But
I don't know if he's going to be able to repeat that this year necessarily. I mean, you look at the team he's playing on.
we can talk about the last player we're going to talk about today, Rashawn Slater. I had him at number 5. I'm curious how far outside the top 5 you had him. I get this kind of projection, but I think he was a top 10 tackle in football last year. And I think you could have made a case he was top 5 to 7 tackle. And I think combining the guards with him was good guys like Nelson, Martin, Tonio. But I think, and the centers like Kelsey, Corey Lindsley, who just missed for me. But I chose Rashawn Slater. I think being Justin Herbert's blind side may get him extra attention. And I think he's going to have a good year. I'm curious if he made the Pro Bowl last year. I'm going to look that up real quick. But do you have anything to say about Rashawn Slater? Because I was high on him coming out of college, but I liked Sewell more than Slater. And I think Slater impressed more as a rookie. So what do you have to say about Slater did make the Pro Bowl last year as a rookie. So
yes, he did. He did.
How far off the top 5 was he for you?
He's 7. So, like I said earlier, Tristan Wirfs, they are both 6 and 7. Armstead and Ryan Remchek are 4 and 5. Those 4 guys can be entered the way you would want. To be honest with you, it's a 4-way tie for 4. I chose the more experienced guys over the more younger guys. Even though Ramczyk and Wirfs, same draft class, same like around the same time. I just think Ryan Ramczyk is overall he's just a little bit more better than Rashawn Slater. Rashawn Slater as a blocking left tackle. He's just so good, really good, and he's so young. Just coming off his rookie year, had a rookie year. And I overall really, really enjoyed watching him play. I see what he does this year, but I don't think he cracks the top 5 quite yet.
Okay, understandable for Rashawn Slater. So anyway, that's top 5 players at each position on the offensive side of the ball. Kind of switched just towards the end of the podcast that we're going to do defense next week, just realizing how long the podcast has been. Very long podcast. So just offensive side of the ball. But we got defensive side next week.
And
are you
special
excited
teams
for that, Graham? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so defense and kicker next week because Graham wanted to throw in kicker, so we'll get kicker.
Yeah. I'm super excited about next week. I love some good old defense. There's a couple little shockers in there.
There's a lot of Saints players on Graham's defense rankings. Which the Saints
there is.
The Saints do have a case for a top 3 defense in football, so it's understandable. But that's going to cover this week's episode. Appreciate you guys who tuned in. And anything to add until next time?
No. The Washington Commanders, football team, Washington Redskins.
Enough about the Commanders.
Fire Dan Snyder. Week 3 of me saying that.
Okay, yeah. And one thing to add, expect to see on this channel my offensive rankings video coming out within the next week or so, as well as a podcast next week where we just covered. We're going to talk about the defensive guys. So anyway, appreciate y'all for tuning in, and until next time.